Before I found your work, I was completely overwhelmed.
The ultra-processed food that accounts for 57% of the calories for adults is associated with terrible health outcomes. That really simplified how to talk about this publicly. It simplified how to implement it as I was doing it with my family. My advice to your followers is
I'm Selena Buongiorno, physician assistant, patient living with MS, and host of MSwired Podcast. Thank you for joining me. I'm truly honored to share today's episode with someone who played a huge role in my personal healing journey. When I was first diagnosed with MS, I was overwhelmed, scared, confused, and unsure of what came next. Finding Dr. Wahls' work was one of the things that brought me clarity and hope. Her research in the Wahls Protocol was my first introduction to functional medicine, and honestly, it was a turning point for me. Dr. Terry Wahls is a physician, researcher, and someone who turned her personal battle into MS into a mission of healing. She has secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, which confined her to a tilt-recline wheelchair for 4 years. She restored her health using a diet and lifestyle program she designed specifically for her brain, and now pedals her bike to work each day. She is the author of several books and a true pioneer in using nutrition and lifestyle to treat autoimmune conditions. Today, we're diving into her latest insights, research, and what's next in the world of MS and functional medicine. Dr. Wahls, thank you so much for being here today. It is truly an honor to speak with you.
Well, we share an important mission, an important perspective.
We definitely do. And I just have some questions for you that I thought people would be interested in knowing. Can you share the turning point in your MS journey that led you to start exploring nutrition and lifestyle beyond conventional medicine?
Well, when I was first diagnosed, I was following a low-fat diet. When I read the Swank book, I was like, okay, that's what you should be doing. And so I felt things are going very well. And it's super interesting that 2 years into my journey, my neurologist, conventional neurologist, introduced me to the work of Ashton Embry. And he was an advocate of adopting the paleo diet. So I read Lauren Cordain's book, his website, his papers. And after a lot of thought, because I'd been a vegetarian for many years, I went back to eating meat, and I had these conversations with my farmer parents who had both died previously and said, I guess they had told me that I was ruining my health by not eating meat. And I said, okay, maybe you guys were right. And I went back to eating meat. And the next year I needed a tilt-recline wheelchair. My physician neurologist said, it's fine to stay in the paleo diet. I don't think the diet changes while you're in the wheelchair. It's just that you were 48 and you've converted to secondary progressive MS. Convinced me to do Tizabri, and then, actually convinced me first to do mitoxantrone, and then Tizabri, and then we switched to Cellcept. And that's when I'm like, you know what? I can see how terrible this disease is for me. And I'm going to go back to reading the basic science. Because when I first was diagnosed, I started reading some papers, got myself really upset because I saw that it's a progressive disease and the extraordinary rates of disability. And my family convinced me, my wife Jackson, Terry, you have to stop reading because all it's doing is getting you upset. We'll find the best center in the country, which is how I, went to one of the best MS centers in the country. I saw their best physician. And, in retrospect, I'd given up some of my self-control by saying, okay, I'll stop reading the research. But when I saw how terrible things were, you know what, I'm going back to reading the research because things are really terrible. I would decide that mitochondria dysfunction is what's driving disability. And I would eventually start reading basic science, looking for what were the supplements I could take to support my mitochondria. And that helped a little bit. And, I was super grateful for the little bit of help it had for my fatigue. And then, as you know, I discovered the Institute for Functional Medicine. I discovered electrostimulation of muscles. I added those things. And then I really have to laugh, Selena, at how long it took me to have this aha, what if I redesign my Paleolithic diet based on this long list of supplements that I'm taking? So I found the Linus Pauling Institute for Micronutrients and, create this list of here are the foods that I should eat that are compatible with a Paleolithic diet.
It's amazing. Now, when you first began implementing these changes in your own life, what were the biggest challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
I would say that the first thing was I had these lists of foods that I needed to stress. And as I changed my way of thinking about disease and health, I had been sent over to the traumatic brain injury clinic, and I wanted to teach these men and women with traumatic brain injury how to improve their diet. And I just couldn't give them long lists of foods. So I had to think deeply okay, I need some simple instructions that they could remember, or I could write out in my 20-minute encounter with them so they could take it home. And that's how I end up with 9 cups of vegetables, 3 cups of greens, 3 cups of sulfur-rich cabbage, onion, mushroom, 3 cups of deeply colored meat, or legumes and rice if they're vegetarians. I could write that out in a few minutes and send it on their way. And that really simplified how to talk about this publicly. It simplified how to implement it as I was doing it with my family. And that was much easier than having the list of foods that I was trying to stress each week.
No, of course. And before I found your work, I was completely overwhelmed because, like you said, there's so much out there. You don't know what to do. The more you read, it's just not good.
It becomes confusing, and there is a lot of conflicting stuff out there.
Of course.
I do want people who are listening to realize that the research continues to grow, that the ultra-processed foods, and by that is the added sugars, the flour-based bread, cereal, pasta that accounts for 57% of the calories for adults our age and 67% of the calories for our children is associated with terrible health outcomes.
Right.
Bad for our brain, bad for our bodies, bad for metabolic health. And we keep eating more of this terrible food. If the only thing that people do is swap out water and tea and coffee for these sugar-sweetened, artificially sweetened beverages, that's step number 1.
Right.
Step number 2 is swap out, potatoes, yams, squashes, starchy vegetables for the flour-based foods. That's the next swap I'd have you do. And if that means you're going to do it as a Mediterranean diet, that's a huge forward progress. Or if you're ready to be a little more, have a higher impact, you can do it as a paleo eater, but drink water, eat vegetables. It will go a long way towards improving your health.
Right. No, and we know that nutrition creates such a resilience in the brain and body for everyone with MS. So it's great that you can put it in a way that's not so overwhelming.
Correct.
And you've conducted clinical research on the Wahls Protocol. What's been the most compelling finding so far? And what do you see in the upcoming studies that you're looking forward to?
Super interesting manuscript. So we've done 11 clinical trials looking at diet or looking at a online wellness course or looking at virtual training for diet, walking, and meditation. Every time we study, we can find that improving your nutrition and self-care within 12 weeks, I'd say for 70 to 85% of the participants, there's measurable improvement in energy, measurable improvement in mood, measurable improvement in quality of life, which further improves when it go out 24 weeks
Right.
or 6 months. And then when there's another really interesting process, a network meta-analysis, where you look at all the trials from everybody doing a diet study that has lasted at least 4 weeks and had a fatigue or a quality of life outcome. And by doing a network meta-analysis, you can compare the effect size from the most effective to the least effective. And what we see is for fatigue, there are 3 diets. It was Paleolithic, Mediterranean, low saturated fat. Basically the Swank McDougall diets. And the paleo diet was about 40% more effective than Mediterranean or low fat for fatigue. For quality of life, when we look at mental quality of life or physical quality of life, that's just 2 diets. It is paleo and Mediterranean, and the paleo diet is twice as effective as Mediterranean. However, I want everyone to know that if you're in my clinical practice, and what I teach is we still have to look at the person. Do they have insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, severe
Right.
obesity? Then a ketogenic diet may be better. Do you have a family who's like, no, that is too hard. I'm not ready to do a paleo diet or a keto diet. Then because doing things as a family is much more successful,
Right.
then do a Mediterranean diet. So I really encourage people to sit down with your family and say, what are the foods we're willing to add that would be good for us? And you can start with, what vegetables do you like? What berries do you like? Let's start with that. And what beverages do you enjoy that don't have added sugar? And preferably don't have artificial sugar. You increase those.
That's amazing. And how do you see the role of lifestyle medicine evolving in mainstream neurology and MS treatment over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, the good news is in 2009, I'm a banned speaker because my ideas are so dangerous. Now in 2024 and 2025, my work is cited, thousands of times. We're recognized as a leading researcher in the diet and wellness space. And when you go to the consortium of MS centers, they have an annual clinical meeting where they're training clinicians. More and more of the lectures are saying diet matters. Here's how you could incorporate nutrition education in what you're doing. And there are more and more people saying exercise really matters, that we should do that. And I think people are hearing that. I'm not telling people to not take DMTs. Take the DMTs, read the package insert, and the standard is you want to have 3 years of no relapses, no new lesions, and then you could transition from whatever your potent DMT is to a DMT with fewer side effects and potentially off of DMT. You'd still want to continue to have your surveillance. And the older you are, there's less advantage to having a DMT because our immune cells get old. They don't have relapses. We don't have as many new lesions. And the adverse events from having your immune suppressed with more infections, more cancers, continue to climb. So there's a big debate. How do we get people off? And the agreement is no relapses, no new lesions, 3 years. Then you can be, if the person's over age 50, then the recommendation is transition them to a less potent drug, maybe things like Copaxone or maybe nothing at all, and keep doing the surveillance. That was a crazy, crazy talk, 10 years ago. Now it's like, maybe that is what we should be doing.
No, definitely. And I know that many people living with MS feel a loss of control. How can lifestyle medicine help patients reclaim some of that control and feel empowerment in their healing journey?
Well, I think the really vital question that there's been a huge shift of what is it that I'm doing that supports creating health in myself? And so now we're going to talk about my diet, my sleep, my exercise, how I manage stress. Do I have a meditation, mindfulness practice? And my advice to your followers is add these practices again at a pace that you can manage. And if you can do them as a family, I think a wonderful practice is before your meals, go around and have a gratitude statement. Today's a beautiful fall day. I could start my meal with, it is just such a gorgeous fall day. I could start my gratitude with, I had a great time watching Fever basketball last night. I had a great time watching Packer football over the weekend. So we can have very simple gratitudes, as simple as the weather's beautiful, or as simple as I get to have our grandson tomorrow, and I'm so looking forward to it. So a gratitude practice, a mindfulness meditation as a family, so you can teach your children and your spouse the benefit of these mindfulness practice. And then exercising together. However it is that you can exercise with your family, your children, will teach your children that moving their bodies is a really good thing to be.
I love. Yeah, we just got my children, they're 7 and 10. We just got them rollerblades. So the 4 of us, my 2 kids and my husband and I went rollerblading the other day. So
perfect.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
And if our kids see their parents exercising and meditating, they will do that. And if their kids see their parents making food, having meals together, knowing how to cook from a recipe, that's really helpful. And I encourage parents to have the children involved in meal prep, cleanup, and soon you can have your kids start doing meal preparation with the recipes. They can learn how to follow basic recipes. They can post mom and dad as the sous chef. They will love that. Again, the more we can do these lifestyle interventions as a family, the far more successful you will be. And you will be passing on these really powerful lessons in creating health to your children.
That's such good advice. And especially, too, I think people underestimate the power of a positive mindset. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And if you could correct one common misconception about MS or lifestyle approaches to MS, what would it be?
You do either lifestyle or conventional medicine. Lifestyle, we should all be doing lifestyle for no other reason because you want to thrive into your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90, 100 and beyond. And yes, you can still use conventional medicine for any other medical issues that you have, whether it's MS or anxiety, depression, a bladder infection. We often have bladder infections. Take your antibiotics, take care of the bladder infections. So it's not an either or. You could absolutely do both. If I break my arm, I'm going to go to the doctor, get a cast, and continue to do my self-care, make sure I'm doing my push-ups to make sure I have strong, healthy bones. It is not either or.
Right. No, that's great advice. It definitely has to be a combination. Do you have anything else that you wanted to say, any type of message for any listeners or anyone watching?
we're just looking at a super interesting analysis of the impact of social support. We know that the support of your family and your friends is really vital. So having them encourage you with your nutrition and self-care, very helpful. And for the people who are discouraging you, that is profoundly not helpful.
Right.
So that may mean if you have people who are very negative and toxic, figure out how to control that negativity. Don't do food-based activities with somebody who's going to be negative around
Right.
you. Do something else.
They can't come for dinner.
They don't come for dinner. You don't go to their place for dinner. You do other non-food-based things. Don't set yourself up for an environment where friends, family, and colleagues are discouraging what you are doing. Restructure the social interaction so you don't have to have that discouragement. Because what we know is that is actually profoundly negative on our mental health and our quality of life.
Well, Dr. Wahls, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with us today. Your journey and your research are giving people with MS not just the tools to succeed, but also hope. And I can't wait to see what you're up to in the future. And to all of my listeners, be sure to check out her work if you haven't already.
Follow me on Instagram. You get to see what I'm eating and doing, and that's at Dr. Terry Wahls, Terry. Wahls, Wahls. And please come to my website, terrywahls.com. Scroll down to the bottom, sign up for my emails so you get I guess every month, probably every week, I'm talking about the latest research, and I think people find that to be incredibly useful to know. What are the research that is talking about wellness activities, nutrition activities, how supplements help or don't help, how exercise helps or doesn't help, which exercises are the best, what are the latest findings in the various nutritional studies. And while I talk a lot about MS, I do cover other brain-related issues, health-related issues. So please sign up for my email so you can get those updates, and follow me on Instagram. You see what I'm eating and doing, or follow me on Facebook. Facebook is just Terry Wahls.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.